So they sent divers down and they found 27 tyres. Now you might wonder where the tyres came from. They used to be used as a buffer between boats and the side of the pier, and sometimes they would fall off. Obviously a lot fell off here. This is our action area, our wonderful pump track, skate park and All Abilities playground. Now, the All Abilities playground was advocated for by one family whose daughter Macy Lee, who was in a wheelchair, wanted somewhere for all kids to play. So the family got politicians on board and they found the funding to build this. No sooner did the gates open, everybody came down for a play, even the grown-ups. Where else can you go on a flying fox? Now, it's a beautiful harbour to paddle in, and we've got a big community of kayakers and stand-up paddle boarders. And it's not uncommon to see a seal. We've got lots of seal colonies. In the warmer months under the jetties, you'll see big 2-metre across stingrays gliding around, hoping you'll throw them a fish. But between May and October, the whales are in the area. The whales come to the warmer water to carve, and when the business of carving is over, they'll have a play, and they even come into the harbour sometimes. They'll throw up a fin or a tail in gay abandon to the delight of the many photographers, blissfully unaware that this used to be a whaling colony. So back between 1830 and 1840, it was full-on whaling. And the whaling companies and the shipbuilding crews were all along the beach from here all the way around to Mount Clay, that hill you see at 3 o'clock. The smoke signal would go up from Mount Clay indicating there was a whale in the bay, and they'd all row out, and the first to harpoon the whale got the prize. Now, by the end of the 1840s, they pretty much fished all the whales out, but today we've got really good numbers, thank goodness. Now, the sealing started a lot earlier, and it was a different type of camp. It was a group of men dropped off in an isolated situation, along with their equipment. They had to fend for themselves, find their own food, make their own shelter. They'd be picked up a couple of months later, along with the barrels of oil and the pelts that were used to make fur coats and caps. Then they were dropped off somewhere else to do it all again. Now, the seal oil was a preferred oil because it didn't give off a smell or a smoke. And they pretty much fished all the seals out. But today we've got very big numbers of seals in a number of big colonies. Now, up ahead on our left, where that lovely big mural is, was our railway station. And the reason the railway station was down at sea level was before all of this harbour was developed as you see it now, there was a big pylon jetty out into the open ocean that the ships would pull up at. And the train would go out on the jetty and pick up the cargo and then head off up the hill to Melbourne fully loaded. Towards the end of the jetty's life, the legs would move. And the wheels of the engine would slip off and land on the deck, and that wasn't good news. They had to jack the engine up, the driver had to hop back up in it and gently draw the engine in reverse, pulling the wheels back onto the track. And that happened to one driver 3 times. And then, of course, it was condemned, and by the end of the 1950s, they built the harbour the way you pretty much see it now. The grey building is the information centre and a great source of information about what you can do in the area, both now and throughout the year. They've got the skeleton of a whale suspended from the ceiling and quite a good cafe. Now in 1883 there was a nun who was a bit unwell and she came to Portland, and she must have had some influence because they built Loretto Convent with her recommendation. And the nuns were here until the 1960s, and they would walk down the hill and have a swim at a lovely beach, which today we call Nuns Beach. Now it's one of our swimming beaches. People do swim every morning, all year. Bridgewater's another one of our swimming beaches, and we've got quite a few surf spots. Now Mount Clay, we said, was the whale watching lookout. Today it's got a great free camp on it, a lovely spot to camp under big trees. It's also got a large network of mountain bike trails, and you can ride or walk them. And it's not uncommon to see an echidna. Now when we had the train station down there and the train came up here, fully loaded off to Melbourne, it would do a left-hand turn up here and go under a beautiful bluestone tunnel. Unfortunately, the tunnel had to be pulled out. It became unstable, but the beautiful bluestone wall was there. And you'll notice we've got a lot of bluestone buildings and walls. That's because there's a string of extinct volcanoes running from Geelong to Portland and beyond. Another evidence of that is in some volcanic craters. When we get up a bit higher and you look back past the silo, you'll see an island called Lawrence Rock. It's the other side of a collapsed volcanic crater. And if you go out to Bridgewater and you're standing at Bridgewater Bay looking out to sea, you're looking across another collapsed volcanic crater. And the big mound on your right, the big bluff, is a mound of historic ash. If you walk up onto that bluff, it's a 1.5-hour walk out and back to look down at a seal colony from a platform, and they're fascinating. Or in the summer months, you can get a boat trip from the beach out to see the seals up close. Now that's lovely Nuns Beach, a good spot for a walk, and there's a red and white striped box down there that the local school keep filled up with toys. So we had our large Aboriginal community. Then we had the sealers, then the whalers, and then in the mid-1800s, the English pastoralists came to the area to take up big leases of land to raise a very valuable merino sheep for its wool. And along here is where they planted the first crop. So today we call this the ploughed field. Now you'll notice up here, it hasn't got going yet, there's a hang glider. So there's a fantastic updraft apparently from Nuns Beach Cliffs, and quite often we have a number of hang gliders. And about twice a year they have a great big competition, and there's probably 100 people there, and all these hang gliders. It looks amazing. What a view they'd have. Now we had a large Aboriginal population here and to the north around Lake Condah because of the constant food source, and at Lake Condah they built canals out of the lake and put fish traps in them, and they did that for 6,000 years, living in stone huts, and that's gained World Heritage recognition, and you can do a budge bin tour. Now you'll see back behind us some bluestone walls with some plaques on them. They commemorate those people who've lost their lives at sea, and there have been many. This is part of the Great Shipwreck Coast. But in the 1980s there was a tragedy of a different kind. The trawler could catch its net on the bottom of the ocean, and if the skipper didn't or couldn't release the net, it would pull the boat under, taking all lives with it, and that happened twice. Fortunately that doesn't happen today. Now these bluestone walls commemorate those people who arrived in Australia via the Port of Portland. Now Mar just got busy and made some sculptures out of recycled materials. We've got the fantastic wedge-tailed eagle there made out of tyre, rubber and metal. And on the other side of this big cypress we've got another sculpture which almost got collected when a great big limb fell over in a storm about a week ago. Fortunately, it's still there. Gee, I hope redbacks don't get that big. Now, we didn't always have a tram in Portland, but in 1996 some volunteers got together and it took them $2 billion in 6 years, and they created sets of grip cars and saloon cars and this complete track which complies with rail. Now, the grip cars don't grip a cable and get pulled along like they do in San Francisco. They're a diesel engine with hydraulic drive, and they're not original. We've got 3 and they're recently made. Now, we had a local builder, Mr. Airy, who when he retired he wanted to build his own grip car. It took him 12 months, working in his shed full time with the help of our mechanic Lou, and they built the 3rd grip car, so we're very lucky. But the saloon cars, of which we've got 4, they were original, but they didn't look like this. One was a chook house for a while, so imagine what that looked like. Another one was lived in out at North Portland in the bush by a World War II veteran, Private Moody. Private Moody was in Egypt and he picked up a little Egyptian terrier and called him Horry. Horry had an uncanny knack of barking whenever there were enemy aircraft coming, so he became very valued and was even given a rank. And at the end of the war back then, you couldn't bring an animal through quarantine. They all had to be put down or given away. But he wasn't having that. He was bringing Horry home. So there was lots of arguing, swapping of Horry from bag to bag, and even a substitute dog. And he got him back through the port of Melbourne. So we thank him for that wonderful story, for saving the saloon car, and for his service. And if you'd like a good Australian history read, the book's called Horry the War Dog. Now we're coming up to the halfway mark. We'll be stopped there for about 5 minutes. You've got time, if you want to walk over to the whale watching platform. We'll give you a bell when it's time to come back. Now we'll be stopped beside a water tower. There used to be 2 water towers until the 1970s that provided our town with water, and then we got too big for that amount of water. 2 young lads climbed the water tower in South Portland and one fell in and drowned sadly, so they pulled it down. This one survived and is today a World War II museum of 3 levels, 360-degree viewing platform at the top. Allow about an hour. From where we stop, if you look out to sea, at 2 o'clock you'll see an island off the coast, Mar, or Lady Julia Percy Island as it's known today. It used to be part of the mainland a long time ago. It had very big trees on it, but a seal colony camp was set up there, and of course they needed timber and they needed food, so they cut down the trees and they introduced rabbits for food. But today they've got rid of the rabbits and there's a low scrum. But during World War II there was a training flight out of Mount Gambier that crashed into the sea and the wreckage washed up on Mar. Sadly they didn't find any of the 4 crew, but there's a fabulous memorial to them at the Crags on the way to Port Fairy.